The day started like any other. Sunshine spilled across my property. The cows were grazing lazily, and my brand new shed gleamed proudly in the backyard. Little did I know this modest, perfectly legal shed was about to ignite a full-blown neighborhood drama. I was stacking hay bales when I first noticed her, Karen. Yes, that Karen, the one everyone in the HOA whispers about. She stood at her property line, arms crossed, frowning at my shed as if I had built a nuclear reactor instead of a 10x12 storage unit. At first I tried to ignore it, but being a civilized person, I figured I'd at least wave. Nope. Karen stomped over to my fence, wagging her finger like a general issuing orders. She began reciting every HOA rule she could find, some of which I later discovered didn't even exist. "It's too tall," she declared. "It doesn't match the aesthetic," she cried. I tried to reason with her calmly, explaining that the shed met every code, every regulation. But Karen was like a storm cloud, raging, relentless and entirely unwilling to listen. What happened next was classic Karen behavior. She stormed to the HOA office, clipboard in hand, demanding that I take the shed down immediately. I thought she might have a point until the HOA board called me the next day. "You're within your rights," the board said. Karen might want to rethink her hobbies. That should have been the end of it, right? Wrong. Things escalated when Karen's daughter got involved. She began wandering onto my property, snapping selfies with my cows. I didn't mind at first. Who doesn't love cows? But then, she started posing directly in front of my shed, plastering the pictures all over social media, captioned like my farm was a playground for her Instagram feed. That's when I realized Karen's family wasn't just unhappy, they were plotting. Little did Karen know. Her complaints were about to backfire in the most spectacular way. While she focused all her energy on a harmless shed, the city had been quietly investigating her property for something far more serious, and what they found would leave the entire neighborhood in shock. Her prized backyard pool, the one she bragged about at every HOA meeting, was in violation of multiple city ordinances. When the officials arrived, it wasn't a warning. They ordered her to tear it down immediately. And that was just the beginning. When the city officials' truck pulled up to Karen's house, the entire neighborhood practically froze. I swear you could hear a pin drop. There she was, all high heels and fury, marching toward the inspectors like she was leading an army. And the pool, the centerpiece of her Instagram life, the thing she bragged about at every HOA meeting, was about to become her undoing. It started innocently enough. The official, clipboard in hand, walked around the pool, tapping his pen against the tiles and checking the paperwork. Karen hovered behind him, arms flailing. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "I've had this pool for years. You can't make me tear it down." But the city inspector didn't flinch. He pointed to the violations, improper permits, unsafe fencing, drainage issues that could flood the neighbor's yard, and calmly stated, "It must come down by next week." Karen turned bright red, her voice cracking as she tried to argue. She ranted about fairness, the HOA, and how I, yes, me, was supposedly the problem with my little shed. I watched from my property line, partly in disbelief, partly in amusement. Here was a woman who had made it her personal mission to police my life, now forced to face the consequences of ignoring rules herself. Karma, in its finest form, had arrived in the shape of a city inspector. The neighborhood buzzed. People whispered behind fences, phones emerged from pockets, and within hours, the story had spread across local social media. "HOA Karen loses pool battle," read one post. Another said, "Shed wins, Karen loses." I couldn't help but smirk, though I tried to remain discreet. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was just living my life and minding my cows. Meanwhile, Karen's meltdown escalated. She called her HOA friends, threatened lawyers, and even tried to organize a protest. But the city's ruling was ironclad. There was no room for negotiation. By midweek, the demolition crew arrived. The sound of jackhammers and crashing water echoed across the block, a dramatic soundtrack to her pride being dismantled, literally. Keran paced in her yard, looking like a caged tiger, while the pool slowly disappeared into a pile of rubble. And as the dust settled, the neighborhood was in shock, not just at the sight of her backyard stripped bare, but at the lesson unfolding before their eyes. One woman's obsessive complaints over a small, harmless shed had backfired in ways she never imagined. It was a cautionary tale of overreach, entitlement, and the surprising ways life sometimes balances the scales. And just when you think the story ends there, my shed, her demolished pool, neighborhood whispers, Keran's daughter stepped back onto my property, camera in hand, ready for her next selfie. But this time, I was ready. After the pool demolition, you'd think the drama would settle. But in Keran's world, chaos never sleeps. Her daughter, oblivious to her mother's humiliation, strutted onto my property again, phone in hand, ready for her next photo session. The cows were grazing, the shed stood proudly in the background, and apparently this was the perfect backdrop for a social media moment. I watched from the porch, shaking my head. There she was, crouching, pouting, taking selfies with my cows as if they were props in a staged commercial. At first I considered intervening politely. Hey, maybe ask next time, I thought. But then inspiration struck. If Keran's family was going to keep pushing boundaries, maybe it was time to meet their antics with a little rural creativity. Cue the manure loader. I backed the tractor toward the barn, deliberately slow so as not to startle anyone, but making my presence known. The sound of the engine caught her attention immediately. She turned, eyes widening as the massive loader came into view. The cows, sensing the commotion, perked up, adding an extra layer of chaos to the scene. I maneuvered the loader carefully, safety first, but positioned it perfectly to photobomb her carefully curated shots. Click, click, click. Her expression went from smug to sheer horror, as the loader, full of fresh manure, appeared in the background of every shot. The cows mooed in perfect comedic timing, and the golden afternoon sun cast the scene like a perfectly staged movie moment. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she realized that, in one simple act, I had flipped the script. Her selfies, meant to showcase her fun day with the animals, now captured a manure-laden tractor in glorious, undeniable detail. She tried to salvage the moment, turning the camera in various angles, but it was too late. Karma had arrived on 4 wheels and a bucket. The irony wasn't lost on anyone watching. Neighbors peeked from behind fences, stifling laughter, and for once, Keran and her daughter were the punchline. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was poetic. After weeks of complaints, city violations, and social media chaos, a simple, well-timed move reminded them all that actions have consequences. My shed remained untouched, my cows unimpressed but cooperative, and the manure loader had made history as the ultimate photobomb. By the end of the day, Keran retreated to her house, muttering about the audacity of farmers, while her daughter sulked over her ruined selfies. Meanwhile, I returned to my chores, the sun dipping low, the cows content, and a sense of justice settling peacefully over the farm. Little did Keran know, this wasn't the end of the story. There was one final chapter where her obsession with control and my patience would collide in ways no one could predict. After the manure loader photobomb, you'd think the saga had reached its peak, but Keran isn't a person who accepts defeat quietly. If anything, the loss of her pool, the public embarrassment, and the ruined selfies only fueled her determination. She spent the next few days pacing her backyard, muttering complaints about me, the HOA, and apparently the universe itself. But the universe had a sense of humor, and it wasn't done yet. One Saturday morning, the neighborhood gathered for the weekly HOA inspection, an event Keran treated like a coronation. Armed with her clipboard, she strutted down the street, ready to unleash her fury. The irony? The city had tipped me off that Keran had continued making unauthorized modifications to her property, even after the pool fiasco. It was a ticking time bomb, and this inspection would be the fuse. As Karen started her usual litany of accusations, "This shed is too tall, that fence is unacceptable," I stood calmly, watching the drama unfold. My cows grazed nearby, as if perfectly aware of the spectacle. The HOA committee listened politely, taking notes. But then came the twist. One of the city officials who had previously overseen the pool demolition showed up unexpectedly. He had documentation in hand, fines, violations, and a formal order citing multiple infractions on Karen's property. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, but no words came out. Well, aside from a strangled, "This can't be happening." The city official explained that not only did she have to remove her latest unauthorized structures, but additional fines were pending if compliance wasn't met immediately. The crowd watched as Karen's grand facade of control crumbled, her power evaporating before their eyes. The beauty of the moment wasn't just in her humiliation, it was in the poetic justice. Karen, who had made it her mission to control my property and police my shed, now faced the ultimate reversal. The city's authority, coupled with her own hubris, had undone her. And as she stomped back to her house, muttering about lawyers and unfairness, the neighborhood couldn't help but cheer silently. Meanwhile, life on my farm returned to its usual rhythm. The shed stood tall, the cows grazed peacefully, and for the first time in weeks, there was quiet. Karen's daughter, now wary of cameras, stayed away from the cows, and even the HOA meetings seemed calmer, at least for a little while. In the end, the saga wasn't just about sheds, pools, or selfies. It was about patience, persistence, and letting life unfold with its own sense of balance. And as I watched the sun set over my land, the manure loader parked nearby, I couldn't help but smile. Some battles aren't won with confrontation. They're won by staying true, letting the rules speak for themselves, and occasionally photobombing a selfie or two. And that, my friends, is how a humble shed and a few cows became the unlikely heroes of the neighborhood. Enjoying this wild neighborhood showdown? Hit that subscribe button to catch more entertaining real-life stories. Also, give this a like if you laughed or cringed at Karen's antics, and drop a comment below. Let me know which part of the shed versus pool drama was your favorite.